Hey, it's Thay, and today I wanted to talk about how I made this VR avatar with no experience. There was a lot of lessons learned, and it took me way too long to do it. But it's done now, so it's I'm pretty happy with it. It has a lot of glitches. Obviously, it's my first time, and it's my first 3D object I've ever made in my entire life. So not too bad for my first time. I had a lot of help from my friend CodyWuff, who will be joining me shortly. And we're kind of going to go through the process of just a very quick, brief overview of just how much work this takes and the general process and steps of what we did to get there, and a lot of mostly just about lessons learned along the way. So it's just kind of a general introduction to, hey, if you want to make an avatar, here's how much work it takes. And trust me, it's a lot. It took me way too long. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Hey, I am a animation student at The Ohio State University. I do a lot of this for fun, but I also study it. And I just wanted to kind of go through the steps in the process from the beginning. I always like trying to show people how to do 3D model. It's something that not tons of people do. So the more that I get to teach people and get them into the field, I love it.
How long we known each other? Like 2016, 17?
Yeah, something like that. It's been a while.
I just remember going to MFF, riding in my car. But that's basically how we met. We just were like,
Yeah.
We hung out at the con through mutual friends. And then you're like, oh, we're from the same hometown? Okay, let's drive 6 hours together in a car with a stranger.
Right.
it's furries in a nutshell.
Pretty much. And hey, look, we're still talking, so I guess it worked out.
Aw, you're the best. Okay, so we had 5 basic steps? Is that...
Pretty much. It started off on sculpting, would have been the very first step. Oh, blocking out,
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
put blocking out.
Yeah. Is that you?
It's me in my underwear in the bathroom.
Okay, and actually though, especially if you're going to be using a 3D model in VR chat for full body, it doesn't really matter too much if you're not going to do full body. But if you are going to do full body setup, it's best to have your proportions as human-like as possible, because it's going to make the part where you line up your body a lot more easier, and it's going to look a lot more natural in game if you try to use full body. It's easy to get caught up in detail sometimes, but really it's like you want your block out to be just a block out. And that's one of the biggest tips I could probably give to anyone beginning is don't get caught up in the detail, because it's really easy, especially when you're working on one area, say the hands. it's super easy to start staring at it and you spend 2 hours on just adjusting the thumb joint, when at the end of the day this is just a block out. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's just to give you a general sketch idea of where your proportions are going to be and things of that nature. A lot of times if I'm starting to get caught up in something, I'll zoom out so I can see the whole avatar, and if I can't notice the changes I made from seeing the whole avatar, then I'm wasting my time at this step. As you begin to refine your model and resculpt over it, that's when you spend the detail in, is the later steps, because most likely any detail you added now will get destroyed and overwritten by the time you finished sculpting.
I had a lot of fun sculpting. I thought that was honestly the most fun for me. So what is sculpting? Well, I guess I should know the answer to that. But I guess making it more smooth, right? So this kind of deal.
Yeah, so essentially your transition from blocking out to sculpting. The traditional method of creating a sculpture is just from a sphere or a cube, and then you stretch it out to make your body. The issue with that is you can waste a lot of time on just trying to stretch and just trying to get it the right shape. So that's why I prefer blocking out models, because it lets you get general shapes with just like squares and circles and triangles. You can use those to normally build up most shapes in a body. Essentially, your transition from sculpting to block out, or block out to sculpting, would be the process of blending all your blocked out shapes together into one mesh. Once you would get your general shapes good, that's when you'd start to add fur detail and skin detail and textures. You could have a high detailed sculpt, and still save that information for later.
You know what's funny? This kind of looks like Spyro. It's just purple dragon.
Kinda does.
And then
It does.
I see where I went back and hand sculpted all these.
It does look better. I do like that. Yeah.
I mean, notice they're different colors because they're separated objects from each other. They're grouped separately.
Yeah. Which is generally, honestly, a normal practice with it. You can make it all one piece if you really want to, but a lot of times it's easier and faster just to make multiple meshes.
Gotcha.
When it comes to separate parts like that.
Oh God.
Yeah.
What have I done? Can I just make the avatar this? Just,
You should upload a version of that,
just
please.
oh god, this is my first version is already terrifying enough. But yeah, because this is nice because it made me able to do dynamic bones for these, so the ears move, they flop around.
Yes, yeah.
And so does this weird spine of a mane now.
It's okay, especially during the blockout phase, to not really have a direction in mind exactly, and just to get the general shape in mind. But once you begin sculpting, you kind of want to start really thinking about, what do you want this avatar to do? Do you want it to have moving parts? You know, like, are you planning on dynamic bones? Do you want it to be full body compatible? Kind of just beginning to think about those steps can help you create pieces to make your life easier later on.
I love retopology so much with all the sarcasm in my heart.
You know, I could tell with all this. It looks like you have the most photos of it. So.
I do, because I was so confused. I'm just gonna scroll through here.
Retopology can be the most daunting because it's surprisingly, honestly, probably the most important parts of the whole process. Bad topology can ruin a model. You can kind of see in this photo here, you beginning those poly loops and things like that, and that's really important when it gets to weight painting, because the computer can essentially look at the loops independently. Where if there's not proper loops being formed, it doesn't know what the different parts of the mesh are.
You mean like this?
Yeah.
Is that a proper loop?
No.
Oh jeez.
Beautiful.
Oh gee, he's a mermaid.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue.
This is what the auto-generated one, and I forget which program this is. 3D code.
Oh, 3D code, yeah. The auto generation is normally fine for objects. It gets difficult with an actual avatar though, because you have so much deformation, which is the movement of polygons, like when you move your arm or something, that's deformation. The auto generated topology is kind of creating it thinking that it's not going to move. And joints that will get stretched, you need to add extra layers there to allow it to stretch properly. See, that's actually pretty good. Like, you're getting like shape and kind of forms there.
Don't mind this one.
Yeah, that's
Okay, quick note. This is the most terrible part. If you have a character with a tail, especially like a thick tail, this is the worst part to retopologize.
yes. No,
Like,
it really is.
because you have to have, and I'm not trying to be weird here, but you have to have, like, stop trying to be super serious right now. You have to have loops coming in from, so you have a loop around the leg, you have a loop around, I think, like the side here where the torso is, and then you have to figure out how to put this third limb in here.
And just to make it even better, not only do you have multiple loops converging, which is going to create something called poles, which are a pain to deal with sometimes. This is also one of the places of most deformation. I mean, you think of how much you move your legs and how much that like shifts.
Yep.
So you need to have, really, this is one of the more important places to have good topology and good poly loops. Because without it, you're going to notice really, really bad stretching. And I notice it a lot. Like most avatars you would look at in VR chat, have them stretch their leg out, move the leg, and you notice that the textures will stretch heavily right around the groin area. And that's just because topology there is very difficult.
Like, here's a good example of right here. I think I had a pole and I just could not figure this out. And if you notice, there's actually a gap.
Oh, that's even worse.
Oh yeah.
That's an in-gone right there.
Yeah, this is not okay. There, I fixed it. Kind of. I was doing pretty well. This is the ear. But yeah, and so this would track, it would trace the loops that you have. And it would have some nice loops going around most of it. But once it gets down here to like the earlobe, it starts getting wonky. And like a triangle would split the loop to go somewhere else, and it went all over the place.
You're not going to have perfect topology, and that's okay. It's just practicing the different methods of getting, a bit better each time. Eventually, you'll have good topology, but it's definitely one of the most technical and difficult parts of the process. So that's why especially your first time doing it, try your best, get something down. And you will definitely have mistakes, but that's where you kind of learn from it and just kind of be like, oh yeah, this is really messed up, but that's okay. Yeah.
Pretty sure, yeah, this is looking pretty good. This took a while, not where it's
bits of it are overlapping.
So this is kind of what I had the most trouble with, is honestly the in between the legs and like the crotch and like the tail and stuff like that, because when you come down you have so many rows of topology here, and then it kind of has to go to a central focal point, and then I did some weird funky stuff right here with
Yeah.
loops. I don't know why I did that. I was trying to cut down on topology because obviously I can't fit like 10 to 15 loops through here because that would be insane.
Nor do you want to.
No. And so what happens is it goes through here under the tail, and it just, this doesn't look too bad, but this whole area in here is messed up. So
You can tell it's overlapping a bit.
yeah, there should be
Which would cause some issues.
there should be
but
a later model where it's all said and done, and I can move the leg and I'll show you because the inner thigh kind of comes with the opposite leg, which is obviously not supposed to happen. Or a jagged on here, and the pads too. That really shows up in VR chat because I'm looking at my own hands. It just looks pretty bad.
I think one thing too is a lot of times that's what discourages people. You're like, oh, it shouldn't be taking this long. You know, it's like, oh, I must just be bad or whatnot, and it's like, no. Even myself, like, I've been doing this for a while, and sometimes, you know, if I'll take a bit longer to do something because I'm trying to figure something out or whatnot. It's like, it's not an inability of your skill. If anything, sometimes it is worth it to take a little bit extra time.
All right. So after Retopo, we did painting. Oh look, here's that avatar
Happy
again.
boy.
Yeah, so this texture map thing here, which I don't fully understand because it was automatically generated for me, it cut in weird lines. So instead of like, you know, logically you'd look at this and say, oh, this is a tail, let's chop off this section of a tail by itself and then put it on this texture map here. As you can see, like, that's what it kind of did. But you see like these little ridges here, it's not quite.
Has, yeah, really weird breakpoints.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you for having actual vocabulary. Yeah, weird breakpoints, which you end up seeing here.
Proper, it would be called the UV islands is what they're called. But
Gotcha.
yeah.
I mean, I have literally no idea what I'm talking about. So
if you would like to spend the time, I always highly recommend generating your own UV maps, but that's a whole nother process. And especially how I kind of got into like your UV topology really matters. If you don't have good retopology, then the UV unmapping process, which is essentially cutting your model into pieces so you can lay it down flat, becomes 1,000 times more difficult if you don't have good poly loops. For that example in the tail, you would be able to select the whole tail with almost one click with a poly loop, be able to create something called a seam on the top, have a circle as a seam, and then cut because now essentially you have a tube. You think that tail is just like a single tube, then you can just cut it one line down the tube to unroll it into a flat rectangle. It won't be a perfect rectangle, of course, but you know, like, that's the idea behind it, of course.
But I am happy with the overall, like, how it turned out. I think it looks great for my first attempt at anything. So let's talk about this.
That's beautiful.
I don't...
That's a skill.
Welcome to rigging, everyone.
So yeah, as you can probably tell, rigging's a process of connecting your mesh to a bone structure, so you can move and deform it and position it, and in this case, in a really weird position. But yeah,
I'm pretty sure I opened the program or Blender and it actually just showed up like this, because I think what happened is somewhere along the way I had the height for the model set too low, and apparently just right about their hip. So when it loaded, I guess it went like below the 0 line, and it just said, oh, maybe you meant to put that above the 0 line, and I think it just okay. So yeah, so here's something more of me posing it. This is I think where I started having fun again after retopology. Painting was kind of fun, but I have a pretty basic painting scheme for him. But I was really having fun with this posing mode.
At this point too, I feel like it's just really when the model begins to come to life to some degree.
I don't really understand too much about skeletons. So most of it was auto-generated. So like all the normal people parts were generated automatically, and then I added the tail. I did have some issues with the eyes because for some reason it duplicated the eyes and it was throwing everything off. So this one's still messed up because I fixed it later. But do you notice how when I move the head, the eyes...
Nothing moves with it. It's its own child, where the ears, the eyes, and all that should be a child of the head. Yeah.
So maybe it's because of the neck. That's okay.
So you have everything assigned to the neck instead of it being assigned to the head. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually had a lot of fun with posing and stuff, and then also weight painting.
Yes. Yeah.
You can see these colors going on here. So it's kind of like a heat map of how strong a particular bone affects a section of topology.
In fact, you can see it a bit better if you go ahead and click your overlay button, which is going to be right next to those little bubble spheres. And if you zoom in on it, it's actually going to show you like these white lines, and that just helps to show you the actual like percentages.
I wish I'd known about that sooner, because this is actually a problem for me. And this is the reason why. This is probably like the tail base was probably the hardest to put here. And you see how there's little microscopic sections that it's pulling with it that I wasn't able to visually identify, because to me they just look blue, and I didn't think to like, brush all the way up here.
And one thing too, you can see like on that side it looks good, but on your left side there, your transitions between the different values are kind of jagged. See that? How it's like really. So you could use like the smooth brush to like smooth out your blend there, and it will deform a lot better. So yeah, those contour lines are really helpful. It kind of helps you visualize.
Because I noticed there was like a double vertex there in the crotch where there shouldn't have been. So maybe he is actually a she. I don't know. Let me see if I have shape keys loaded. Basic principles. You just have a shape key. You select what you want it to move, and you have certain syllables that need to be said in VR chat that you can look up online, and just make the face look like that. Okay, Unity.
Yes, yeah, there you go.
Hey, there he is. Yay, look at him wiggle. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. We can, just kind of load in here. I mean, there's so many steps we're skipping over, and it takes lots and lots of time to get all this into this, but I mean,
like all the little individual steps you have to take, but this is like, that's like the general flow.
Lessons learned.
Yeah, of how you go from beginning to end.
So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to actually talk me through most of this stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all.
It was a good project. I'm definitely not cut out to be a 3D animator, but I had a lot of fun. And I have a newfound respect for anyone who does this, because it is a lot of work, and each of these steps is someone's full-time job.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like normally you don't, in the industry, you don't find a lot of people that do everything. I mean, a lot of people, they know every step, but very rarely studios have one person doing multiple of these steps. It would be you're a weight painter, and you're a texturer, you're a sculptor, you're a rigger, you're an animator. People normally have very specific roles, because there's so much to learn in each of those steps that it's not impossible, of course, but it's very difficult for one person to be a master at all of those different steps.
I'm sorry, I'm having way too much fun with this right now.
No, I love it.
All right, bye.
Bye.